Welcome to the Happy Dog Podcast. This podcast is designed to bring you ideas and uplifting information to help you live a meaningful and fulfilled life with your dog from a holistic perspective. Now, let's explore the world of a happy dog. Hello, and welcome to the Happy Dog Podcast. My name is Alicia, and on this first episode, I'm going to talk about how I got the idea for this podcast and what it means and the topics that we'll explore. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, some fun facts, and how I got started in the dog world. Last, I'll let you in on what I've been working on and some fun future plans and how it all relates to keeping my dogs happy and healthy and doing so with a holistic lifestyle. So let's get started. Basically, I got the idea to start this podcast because, of course, like everything else, I was inspired by my dogs. But I really wanted to explore what makes our dogs the happiest and why we as dog moms are definitely obsessed with this notion. The idea basically all started when I was driving with one of my dogs, Izzy, and she was looking out the window. I thought to myself, how did I end up here in this life that completely revolves around my dogs? And I know that that's definitely a loaded life question, but I almost couldn't remember a time over 10 years ago saying to myself, oh, I'm going to be the best dog mom in the world. Because, of course, now that's what I strive to be. At that time, though, over 10 years ago before I got Izzy, all I wanted was a dog. I wanted a friend, I wanted a cute dog and, someone to go on walks with and everything like that. And then once I got a dog, it's like it turned into this full-on dog mom obsession. And I know, of course, that this isn't, the same thing for everybody, but I also know that there's a lot of dog parents that can relate. But I can't remember when it occurred to me that I was this full-blown obsessed dog mom. For me, I also think because I'd been working in animal welfare for so long and I had so many things that were happening to animals through rescue or when I worked at my first animal advocacy job that were really bad to animals. And I think I maybe subconsciously decided that nothing bad would ever happen to mine. And so I was going to be this helicopter dog mom as a result. And so while driving, I kept asking this question, like trying to remember, when did I become such a full-blown dog mom who was worried about everything under the sun with my dogs? And I mean, I'll worry about their happiness at any given moment in the day and night because that's just how I am. I often need to give myself a reality check that my dogs are some of the luckiest and happiest dogs in the world. I mean, I work from home. They eat the best food that is, we spend way too much money on. They get massage treatments from me, aromatherapy treatments, CBD oil, homemade treats, you name it, I'll do it. And that's just how I am. And let's not to mention the fact that they spend at least an hour playing outside every day, unless it's completely freezing. And we live an hour outside of Chicago, so it's often freezing in the winter. Yet I'm still over here wondering, oh my God, are my dogs happy? So am I a crazy person? Maybe to some people I probably am, but that's okay. And for me, I'm just a gal who wants to make sure I'm giving my dogs everything that I can because they solely rely on me. And that's a big responsibility to have. And I have 4 of them. So how I got here and that whole question that started this is, I guess I'll never fully know the moment it clicked for me that I was a full-fledged obsessed dog mom, because I know it was before Mila got diagnosed with diabetes and before I even had Mila because she was my 3rd dog. So maybe for us as dog moms who get here like this, it's just really in our DNA. There's no reason, it just happens because all of a sudden it just happened. So my goal with this podcast is to, of course, if you know me already, talk about holistic lifestyle with dogs. And when I say that, I mean understanding and comprehending all the parts of a dog, not just one or two, but happiness to me is a pretty major part of any living, breathing being. And yes, it can be subjective to us humans in particular, but for dogs, happiness is pretty straightforward, I would say. So for me, happiness and health also go hand in hand, especially when it comes to dogs. A happy dog is a healthy dog is a happy dog. This is just fundamental to me when it comes to dogs. So a lot of what we'll explore in this podcast has to do with health and how it relates to happy dogs. We'll also talk about mental health, particularly mainly in us humans, and how our mental state can translate to our dogs and their feelings of happiness, anxiety, sadness, etc. So to go back to my original question that kind of started this Happy Dog podcast, it's because ultimately I want my dogs to be happy because they make me the happiest, especially when they're happy. And how did that come about? How can we make sure that that happens? And I know that's a lot of questions in there, but that's really what I want to ultimately explore. And if you've ever sat down and thought, oh, this was the day and the time and the place that I became an obsessed helicopter dog mom, I'd love to know about it, first of all. But second of all, if there wasn't, like me, because it kind of like happened, it just unfolded and that's how it was, I'd also love to know. So you can let me know on my blog post for this or Instagram or Facebook, whatever you feel like it, or you can send me an email and we can talk more about it because I think it's super interesting to think about. So let's talk about who I am and what's my experience with dogs and animals in general. So to tell you more about who this voice is, and it's funny that I'm doing a podcast, side note, because I've never liked my voice. I feel like most people don't like their voice, but I in particular have always been told I have a really monotone voice. And so I'll work on the monotoneness throughout this, but bear with me for these first few episodes. Anyway, my name's Alicia, like I said, and I've been working in the animal welfare industry for over 10 years now. And when I say animal welfare industry, I mean that my first job was working for an advocacy group for farmed animals. So I sometimes say animal sheltering world because ultimately I ended up in dog rescue, but really I started out helping farmed animals, and this is a shocking surprise that my favorite animal has always actually been pigs, not dogs. So pigs first, dogs second. I've always had this drive to help animals because they don't have a voice, and I volunteered at rescue shelters towards the end of my college career, and that pretty much sealed the deal with me wanting to help animals once I graduated. The thing that I was internally struggling with at the time was that I had been working my tail off for the 4 years that I was in college in the music industry, a completely separate industry. And I had like an internship every year, every summer in the music industry. I worked some really cool, huge concert experiences and events and things like that. I had amazing, unthinkable experiences. But when I left college and started, I had a job right after college with like a huge event production company that everybody uses every day for concerts, is all I'll say. And I remember going to the first training day, and it was fine and everything. It was normal stuff that I'd been used to, but I left and was thinking, I cannot do this anymore. And I specifically remember calling my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, and saying, I think I have to quit the music industry and my heart's just not in it, and I'm going to go work for an animal nonprofit. And I flat out said, I am probably going to make no money, and I hope you realize that. So that's just something you're going to have to accept. And, oh, I'm getting 1 million dogs, by the way. So he was very fully supportive and said, do it. I want you to be happy. And he said, we'll talk about the 1 million dogs thing. But after that, I volunteered at a few places around Chicago and eventually landed at the Farm Animal Advocacy Organization. And from there, after a while, I left that job and ended up working for an entrepreneur in Chicago who wanted to start a dog rescue shelter for the ground up. And it was a huge opportunity because I was still very young. And while I had the drive, I kind of didn't know what I was doing, but we never all know what we're doing. So that's life. But it was a tough job, not because of the dog rescue part. Honestly, that was the easy part. That was the part I took to. The shelter part, the medical part of it in particular, that's exactly what I took to, and the caretaking. But it was tough because of the boss I was working for, and the word rough is all I'll say about that. But I did end up gaining an incredible amount of experience from that job. So ultimately, the sacrifice of working with someone who was so tough was worth it. And I learned a lot about myself from that job. But that job is also how I adopted, or rather rescued, Hudson and Mila, 2 of my dogs. I had already had Izzy before that job. After that, I went and worked for an animal-assisted therapy organization, and I got my master's in organizational leadership. And then I worked for a celebrity athlete whose wife wanted to start their own foundation to help pit bull type dogs. So I helped them build that organization. And boy, it was a whirlwind of jobs, insane amount of experiences, but also at the end of it, I was feeling like I was taking everybody else's dreams and making them happen. And I wasn't doing anything for me, and I wasn't pursuing my interests and passions within this dog world that I had left the music world, years and years before, because I was so passionate about this work with dogs. So I was also constantly being asked by friends and family, because I was doing the whole raw diet thing. And I mean, everything that, if you know me in my blog, I've already preached about 1 million times over. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll start a blog. And so I started the DIY Dog Mom blog. And then as I dove into that, I got even more requests to do consultations for people for diets, aromatherapy. And I really am into education, and I knew all this stuff. Like, I know it so well, but I wanted to really legitimize my knowledge. So went through a few certification courses for aromatherapy, nutrition, got my certification in canine manipulative therapy, which is a fancy way of saying massage and body work. And here I am now with this podcast. So what do I do now then with all of this stuff? Well, I have the DIYdogmom.com blog still, but you'll see a shift on that website to Alicia's holistic pet wellness. And that's because I really wanted a place where people could come for services that they were seeking, wellness services for their dogs, some horses too, but mainly in the areas of aromatherapy, nutrition, and now canine bodywork. So locally, for people that I can help their dogs with, and then even remotely, distance-wise, anywhere in the world, I can help you with your dog with some of the services that I have. So I also have a few aromatherapy products going up as well. And I'm really focused about enhancing the lives of dogs through holistic wellness modalities. I am not a veterinarian, and I feel like I always have to say I'm not a vet, and this is not to treat or diagnose your pet. But what I found as a do-it-yourself dog mom is that there's so many things that we as pet parents can do on our own. And that's why I wanted to go ahead and get certified in these different modalities so that I could feel confident about going out and teaching people for doing different things with their pets. So I also currently work with a rescue where I live, and the shelter, their isolation shelter, is about like 20 minutes away from me. So at least once a week, I'm there taking care of the dogs and doing the shelter managing there. And then I also help them with their medical dogs, so consulting on those cases and giving my advice. I also have a fund that I started in my dog Mila's name because she's a diabetic, and we'll have a whole few episodes on her, I'm sure. But that fund helps rescue dogs, in particular these rescue dogs that I work with through Fetching Tails Foundation is what the organization's called. And so we pay for like allergy tests, we pay for surgeries, like amputations, things like that. So I take my own money that I make and donate it into that, and then do some fundraising around that as well. That is the long and short of it with what I have going on and why I started this podcast and how it kind of all comes full circle. So the guests that we're going to have on this podcast, I'm super excited about. A lot of them are within the holistic realm. Some are kind of on the cusp. We have some raw feeders, and it's going to be really great for exploring all the ways that you can make your dog happy and healthy. And again, please use me as a resource, whether it's through this podcast or through any of the services I have. You can check all that out at DIYdogmom.com. And be sure to follow the podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook. It's all under DIYdogmom.com. Or just DIYdogmom. So it's easy to remember. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much.